I am so happy, folks, to be yet again the Substack Whisperer. I am the first person to bring David Corn, legendary DC reporter of Mother Jones, the author of the fantastic newsletter Our Land that you should subscribe to on davidcorn.com. I am getting him on Substack Live, where I believe he will be a very popular fixture after he sees how well this goes and sees how many people join and how many people appreciate his excellent reporting. I had David scheduled yesterday before the breaking news, folks, because David has some fantastic pieces out about how the worst people on earth are being implemented in the Trump regime, right? Removing actual experts. Oh, experts who actually go against white supremacists and right-wing extremists, the number one domestic terror threat in America. Well, David has a piece which, again, should be leading news in any other administration. But because we live in the eighth circle of hell, it's not leading. Where Joe Kent, a friend of white nationalists and extremists, is now running America's Counterterrorism Center. Yep, the guy who aided right-wing paramilitary groups, Joe Kent, that guy is running the National Counterterrorism Center. And of course, we also have Thomas Fugate. Oh, Thomas Fugate, the 23-year-old former grocer who is now heading our countering extremism unit. And as we were going to talk about that, some great news just came out that Donald Trump has fired David, the commissioner of Bureau of Labor Statistics, Erica McAnterfer, because she did her job and revealed the actual numbers and data that there was the worst job growth since the pandemic. And it seems that, wait for it, David, the Trump administration might have lied to the American public about our job growth. And then we just found out 20 minutes ago, the Federal Reserve governor is resigning early, handing Trump yet another opening on the board. And I'm sure, David, he will put in a very competent and capable person who has fidelity to the rule of law and the United States Constitution. So with all of that, David, I give it to you. Where do you want to start in this wheel of hell? Where do you want it to land?
Let's start with Richard Nixon. Let's do that. Let's start with Richard Nixon. There was there were many scandals in the Nixon administration. Well, one was he wanted to fire the Jews at the Bureau of Labor Statistics because he believed that the not happy news coming out of the BLS, job figures, unemployment figures, and such, was part of this conspiracy against him that he associated with Jewish people. So he actually assigned one of his aides, a fellow named Fred Malek, who was still around recently raising money for Republicans, to go and find out who were the Jews at BLS so they could, move against them, which I don't think they ever did. But now, of course, in the age of Trump, they don't even bother, taking any preliminary steps. They just, off with their heads. And I mean, I kind of predicted this, I have to say, at the beginning of this year, or even before Trump took office, I said, there is no way he is going to tolerate economic statistics from the federal government that make him look like he's not a gigantic economic success of his administration. And I was, I have to say, a little surprised that it took him this long. I mean, this is Orwell. This is Orwell in terms of controlling the flow of information. And you mentioned how just the other day, the I think this came out yesterday. The Smithsonian removed from its exhibit the Museum of U.S. National History. They have an exhibit
Just yesterday.
about impeachments, and let's see which guy around here has set the record for impeachment. It has to be Donald Trump. So of course he won a place in this exhibit, but his impeachments have been removed. So we're back to 3 instead of what was 5. And I'm just literally for my newsletter finishing up an essay, and I have a quote that's not a pretty famous quote. Hold on a second. Oh my goodness, my email is blowing up with new free subscribers to David Corn Substack, but I don't really have a Substack. Hold on a second. Let me get this quote. So
I'm seeing your gut, David. There you go.
Okay, there we go. I want to get there we go. There we go. Okay. Well, that didn't work out the way I thought it did
It's okay. It's
because
okay.
now my screen is dark. Well, we'll come back to that. Um, Literally, I don't know why okay. I don't know, someone's screwing with us. But in any event, the quote from Orwell was from the party, and remember there was just one party in 1984, the
Yep.
party, and it was those who control the past control the present, and those who control the present control the past. So here we have Donald Trump, who has been doing this a while. He's been trying to get his mitts onto the Smithsonian Institution, and he doesn't like the fact that they have woke exhibits, um, and that they are free to come up with their own forms of history, which are probably closer to the truth. He wants to control history. He wants to control our culture. Um, I mean, there's something called Christian dominionism.
Yep.
It's a fundamental form of right wing Christianity that basically says Christians should have dominion over every important sector of society, family, religion, of course, but business, education, media, arts and entertainment, and I think I'm missing one or two.
Bill
And
Barr and Alito are adherents, by the way, folks, to dominionism. But continue.
yeah,
Nothing
and
to
so
nothing to be afraid of.
yeah, but that's but that's what Trump is trying to do here. Not necessarily for Christian faith. He overlaps with their efforts. He's doing it for Trumpism and for his his own grandeur and glory. But he's out there really whether it's changing park signage at our national parks that go they talk about historical events to getting into um exhibits and trying to fire the head of the Smithsonian and taking over the JFK Center. I mean, I don't say these are, I don't want to say they're small things compared to yanking insurance away from 11, 12 million Americans or shutting down humanitarian aid programs that save the lives of tens, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of people overseas. I mean, everything is a big deal here. But we're seeing this aim, this yearning for total control. And the piece that I'm writing that will be in my newsletter tomorrow, again, davidcorn.com, is called Donald Trump and the Deconstruction of American Society. And
I mean, but
you and
this is what David. This is what I mean. I don't want to interrupt your flow, but you know how you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying. Oh, this might not be as important as literally Medicare being dismantled and the rise of measles and people losing their jobs, but it is part and parcel of what fascists do. What in 1984, another famous quote is the final most essential command of the party was reject the evidence of your ears and eyes. And folks, in real time, literally, as of yesterday and today, the Smithsonian, under pressure from Trump, has removed literally facts. They have removed facts from the museum because he doesn't like the facts. So now it says in the Smithsonian, only 3 presidents have seriously faced removal. No, 4. Donald Trump. And as of today, the Bureau of Labor Statistics did its job, released the numbers. He doesn't like the numbers because the numbers make him look terrible because it reveals that his economy and his plan and his policies are taking this country to shit. So what did he do? He removed the person he didn't like and he's going to put in a reek. Continue, David.
yeah, well, so I was thinking just like every day, you and I and the good people out there who are watching us, we focus on the outrage of the day, and it's not an outrage; it's usually outrages of the
Yeah.
day. So now we're talking about the Smithsonian, the BLS. We were talking about Epstein earlier. We're talking about his claim that Obama committed treason earlier in the week. I mean, every day there's literally half a dozen new affronts to decency, public interest, good government, whatever you want to call it. And there is a plan here. Everything here is part of something bigger. And it is this total, they're looking for a total transformation of American society. They want to, undermine the media. We've seen that with their attacks on ABC and CBS and some of the big media companies buckling. They're taking big law firms off the playing field. In fact, Reuters had a study yesterday saying that, after, even though Trump has lost some of these cases, big law firms are not taking public interest in pro bono cases, or cases that might put them at cross swords with the Trump administration because they don't want to be in the crossfires. He's gone after the universities,
Yep.
and we saw that Columbia, $200 million, my alma mater, Brown University, created a deal that was not as onerous, agreed to a deal that wasn't as onerous as the Columbia deal, but that Harvard, who we thought was the one of these major fronts of resistance to Trump, is in talks with the administration to pay them, not maybe not pay them, but pay $500 million. And
Yep.
then they're not admitting any wrongdoing. But if you're not admitting wrongdoing, why are you settling these cases? But we see it, and he's going after the scientific community. Cutting billions of dollars from NIH grants. That's really destroying a generation of scientists and science. Why do they think science is a fount of liberalism? Maybe because reality has a liberal bias. I mean, so you go down the list, and these are profound transformational changes about how we act as a society, let alone creating a police state, or at least turning national law enforcement, a slice of it, into a police state in terms of rounding up law-abiding residents for really no good reason. Like, what's the reason to round up people at Home Depot who are waiting to do hard work and who, a lot of them paying their taxes and just trying to raise their kids? What is the reason for doing that? They are not harming the economy. They're contributing to the economy. The only reason I can think of is a pretty obvious reason. Okay. And so that again is about making America less diverse, make America white again, whatever you want to call it. So these are all, tremendously deep changes in the fabric of our society, and they're all interwoven. There is this master plan. And I'm not saying it's, Trump, but it's part of Project 25.
Yep.
Steve Bannon was talking about smashing the administrative state, the right for, since the 70s, has been talked about getting rid of the power of the media because it ends up holding, conservatives accountable. It does the same thing for liberals often.
Well, David, what did Roger Ailes said? Since you started with Nixon, let's go back to Nixon. Roger Ailes said that if there was a Fox News, Richard Nixon would never have he would never have resigned.
Exactly right. And one of the things that that I've written about with a book with Mike Isikoff, Russian Roulette, is the whole Russian attack on 2016. And we're seeing, I mean, that was 9 years ago. And we still see Trump and his gang of liars out there with their disinformation campaign,
Yep.
say again and again, saying it was a hoax, nothing happened, it was all a setup. It was now it's like Hillary Clinton made all this happen. I mean, if she was so good at making this happen, why didn't she run a better campaign and win the damn election? I mean, but they're putting out they're
David,
putting
did
out
you see
these.
an hour ago? Did you see an hour ago? Rolling Stone says MAGA's new RussiaGate evidence was likely made up by the Kremlin.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but the thing is, we knew all this already. We knew this when Durham put out his report in 2023. That was the report that Bill Barr, not, yeah, Bill Barr wanted out to try to discredit the Russian investigation. And they try to, say that Obama committed treason by changing and rigging an intelligence assessment that came out in early 2017 when he was still in office, that said that the Russians had attacked the 2016 election and they had done so in part to help Trump win. And they put out these what they call intelligence reports that didn't show this. It was like saying, here, 2 + 2 equals 5. And that means and that means Obama committed treason. I mean, they're really bad at this stuff, but it's all about feeding the Fox News beast, reporters like John Solomon. And then you have Kash Patel, who's the head of the FBI, out there, today or yesterday, putting out a tweet. I still call them tweets, saying, look at this. That Russia was all a hoax. It was all Hillary, Hillary, Hillary. I mean, he even worked for the Republican House Intelligence Committee when the committee itself said that Russia had attacked the election. They
There you
didn't
go.
agree. They wouldn't say that it was to help Trump. But now he says it never happened and it was all made up. So they just put out.
Well, even the Senate Republicans, right, David? Senate Republicans
Oh,
were the
that did.
ones. It was a bipartisan report, and the Senate Republicans said that yes, Russia interfered in the 2016 election. I mean, that was Senate Republicans who joined the Democrats.
Marco Rubio was the chair when this was released. Tom Cotton was on the committee. I mean, it's not up for debate, but they do such a bad job of putting out phony intelligence, and the intelligence they put out yesterday, the reports. If you read them, they don't say what they say they say. I mean, it's like, they put out these reports, then you read the actual report, and it says, well, this material might have been a fabrication created by the Russian intelligence. So they're the ones putting out, fake Russian material to try to get Trump absolved from the Russian attack. But to your point, Roger Ailes Fox, the only reason this works is because you have Fox, OAN, Epoch Times, John Solomon, and people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, who are podcasters and now are in the government, who say yes. And they participate fully in what is, you have to call it, a disinformation campaign. That's
That's it.
what it is. It's like the Soviet Union. And so they will just put this stuff out there without any critical analysis, and they will flag and flaunt these lies, to just make it seem like, oh, there's new material, and oh, Obama and John Brennan, the CIA director for him, and Jim Comey, committed treason. I mean, Jim Comey, the FBI director, is probably more responsible for Trump being elected than almost anyone, with what he did in the last week of the 2016 campaign by reopening the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Now, he didn't do that to hurt her. It's a complicated issue, but if he was plotting against Trump and trying to get her elected and committing treason, he wouldn't have done that. So a lot of this doesn't even make logical sense. But it's
Why
all
wouldn't
because
Obama and the deep state were in control? Why wouldn't they use their powers to give the election to Hillary Clinton, who barely lost by a mustache hair? And then why wouldn't Joe Biden?
Trump always says they're rigging the election. They're rigging the election. Well, why did they not rig it in 2016 when it was that close? I mean, this is the thing with conspiracy theorists. They're always imagining these grand conspiracies of these highly competent secret cabals of evildoers. And then you have to wonder, how come they're now in charge of the government? If these guys are so evil and will do anything, well, it's the whole thing with with Donald Trump saying, they're scum, and they put, when they were in charge of the government, the Democrats in the Biden administration, they put stuff in the Epstein files. Well, if they put stuff in the Epstein files to make Trump look bad, why didn't they leak that? Why would you do that? Why would you make stuff up and fabricate reports to make Trump look bad and then keep them secret? It doesn't make
It's
any
fascism,
sense.
right? It's fascism, and I think that we have to use the fascist word. We have to use the F word, because scholars of authoritarianism have said that this is what fascists and dictators and authoritarians do. They try to rewrite history, right? They attack truth, and they attack truth tellers, and they attack those individuals who expose themselves to set the record straight. Which is why you saw even in Orban's Hungary, right, which is no longer a democratic state. It's a single party authoritarian regime that masquerades as a democracy. What did Orban do? He purged the media, he purged the cultural, sites, and he purged the judiciary, right? And he goes after the universities. What is Donald Trump doing? Going after the universities, going after all the corporate media. They're all shamefully bending the knee. Thankfully, David isn't. I haven't. Others haven't. Going after anyone and anyone who could set the truth. Smithsonian, right? Taking over the Kennedy Center, right? And look what's happening. A fake alternative reality that elevates the king, the daddy, the Trump, right? So now Smithsonian, for the 1,000 people who are joining us and tuning in late as of yesterday, removes Trump from the impeachment exhibit, right? Rewriting facts. So it's no longer just 4 people who were impeached, 3 minus Trump, right? 80% of Republicans believe the lie that Donald Trump won the 2020 election that he lost. 80% of Republicans. And today, the commissioner of the BLS, revealed facts and evidence that job growth was terrible. The worst job growth numbers we've seen since the pandemic, when who was president? Donald Trump. So what does he do? He fired her. And you said there is a plan here, Dave, and I think that's important, because there's intersecting fascists here. There's the bro-oligarchy, the tech fascism of Peter Thiel, of Elon Musk. There's the Christian nationalism of Russell Vought. There's the white supremacy of Stephen Miller, right? All of this is a authoritarian movement. The through line here is power by any means necessary, and also eugenics and white people in general should be at the top, right? That seems to be the through line that it connects the Russell Vaught's, the Stephen Millers, the Elon Musk's, the Peter Thiel's, right? The racism and the greed and the need for power. Not everyone's a white Christian nationalist. Not everyone is an overt white supremacist, but they all love their eugenics and the belief that certain people, not the Jews or the Muslims or the immigrants or women, should be at the top. And this is where I want to take to your article, because I think you and me are masochists. We follow this news. I follow this closely. That the rise of extremism in America and the fact that the number one domestic terror threat in America for several years running has been right-wing terrorism and white supremacist terrorism. And now the people that we should be investigating are now heading the CTC, the Counterterrorism Center. Can you please talk to us about Joe Kent and how this is part and parcel of the plan? Stephen Miller's plan, Russell Vaught's plan, Elon Musk's plan.
Well, Joe Kent is an offshoot of Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard has no business being the senior intelligence officer of the United States and being in charge of overseeing all of the U.S. intelligence community, which is made up of 18 different intelligence agencies. And we saw that this week and last week when she put out these phony reports, totally rigging the intelligence to make it look like Barack Obama did something wrong with an intelligence assessment back in 2017. But she picked Joe Kent to be the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, which is part of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And it does what you think it would do. It is in charge of monitoring terrorism so it can be countered. And that, is supposed to include terrorism overseas and domestic terrorism. But this is a guy, it's not just you and me. Often conventional media does get things right and gets on the right stories. I mean, I wrote a story about him a couple months ago, but I also quoted the Associated Press, and it says that I'm going to quote them, so you don't have to, take it on my word. That Kent stands out for the breadth of his ties to a deep-seated extremist fringe. And this is now me writing. During his first campaign in 2022, Kent consulted with white nationalist Nick Fuentes on social media strategy. Nick Fuentes is truly a Hitler fanboy. You might remember that when Donald Trump had that Thanksgiving time dinner with Kanye West, the other participant in the dinner was Nick Fuentes. Back to Joe Kent.
And he's
He
never
also,
disavowed him or criticized him since.
no, although Fuentes has criticized
Yeah.
Donald Trump. Going back to Joe Kent, he had a member of the Proud Boys on his campaign staff, I noted, and he embraced as a supporter, an ally, a guy named Joey Gibson, who's the leader of Patriot Prayer. That's a Christian nationalist group. And in 2020, Kent helped amplify the organizing message of a new right-wing paramilitary group that called itself First Amendment Praetorian. So here this guy is Christian nationalist, Hitler fanboys. I mean, AP is being a little polite when they say ties to a deep-seated extremist fringe. But part of his job, and you alluded to this, is dealing with domestic terrorism, right? Whether it's from, the far right, far left, anyone in between. But we know that white nationalists and far right folks have really been one of the leading contributors to domestic terrorism. And, it's hard for me to see how he's going to make that a priority when, these are his buddies. These are the groups. This is where he's, the pool in which he swims. Besides the fact, now let's just put this all aside. He's unqualified for the job.
All of
He's
them
got,
are unqualified, David.
yeah, I know they all are unqualified, but I don't think we should, stop pointing that out. Ever stop pointing out? Tulsi Gabbard is unqualified. Kash Patel is unqualified. Dan Bongino. I mean, it takes a lot of experience, Pete Hegseth, to run an organization of 35,000 employees, which is how many people there are in the FBI, and to be able to do that, and to have the wherewithal to understand the full breadth of the government and what other agencies do and how to interact, and what do you do in a crisis, who do you call first, understand intelligence and law enforcement agencies in other countries that you might have to interact with, liaison with in case of an emergency or crisis. I mean, there are a lot of there's a good reason why we tend to give people jobs who have been in similar capacities prior to taking on these important jobs. I mean, the Republicans are always out there saying how much they love the military. Pete Hegseth, by any standard, seems to be having a terribly difficult time at the Pentagon. Put aside even his policies, staff is leaving. People are complaining about him. He seems to be, acting like his own mini Mad King there. But he has no business running the Pentagon because he's never done anything close to this. And the foundation he kind of ran into the ground. And there were a lot of issues there with his management. They contributed perhaps to his drinking, which he claims he's not doing any longer. But he's the only guy who gets rewarded for promising to be sober with with a job in the presidential cabinet. So so it's so they are all we have the government. It's kind of frightening at this moment in time, in the hands of people who have no business holding these jobs, and then their own connections completely undermine the job they're supposed to do. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard has been very pro Putin and has passed on conspiracy theories that the Russians have disseminated about the war in Ukraine. It's her
Russia's girl.
job to it's her job to counter Russian intelligence and influence operations when she's been actually a party to them in years past. So
And also Pete Hegseth, he said in his own biography, American Crusade, that he's too extreme for the military. This is a man who's completely unqualified, who signed an NDA with a woman who is accused him of sexual assault. A man who, when he was at Princeton, said if you have sex with a woman who's drunk, it doesn't count as rape. A man, like you said, who, in addition to being unqualified, has a history of alcohol problems that even his Fox colleagues mentioned in the New York Times, and who's a person who's an O4 rank. And meanwhile, Lieutenant General Austin, a black man, had to be an O10 rank, a four-star general. And Mattis, before him, was also an O10 rank, four-star general. Pete Hegseth was on Fox News for 10 years, and his own colleagues in the Army reported him to be a potential extremist based both on his content and his tattoos, his white Christian nationalist tattoos. So that's the man who's the head of Secretary of Defense. Now we have Joe Kent, who's tied to white extremists and white Christian nationalists as the head of countering the CTC, Center for Countering Terrorism. What is it called? The Center
National
for
Counterterrorism Center.
Counterterrorism. Thomas Fugate, who's the disciple of Stephen Miller, who's allegedly countering violent extremism, even though his previous experience was being a grocer. He's like 23 years old. Kash Patel, who's not in law enforcement, who's the head of FBI because he promised to go after Trump's critics. Dan Bongino, completely in over his head as deputy director of FBI, and whines about it openly on Fox News. Ooh, it's so tough. And Tulsi Gabbard, who's Russia's favorite girlfriend, spreading Russian disinformation. And now, of course,
I'll give you a little bit more on Kent because I'm just reviewing what I wrote a few months ago. Just to I mean, what I gave you, I think, is enough to prove the case that he's a far right fringe player. But he ran for Congress in 2022 and lost. But he attacked Anthony Fauci and said that COVID is nothing but a scam. He of course accepted Trump's big lie that the 2020 election was rigged, and he also accepted the lie that Kash Patel has given some credit to, that January 6th was orchestrated by the deep state to discredit Trump and his supporters. Kent referred to J6 writers as political prisoners. These are guys who beat up cops. He pushed the notion that billionaire Bill Gates was seeking, quote, to control the food supply and control housing to force people to live in pods and eat the bugs. I mean, this is where this guy's coming from. And
That's the head of the CTC, folks. Head of the CTC.
and we expect him to analyze, evaluate, be in charge of our policies of assessing terrorism threats and monitoring them and countering them. I mean, this guy can't give you a accurate depiction of reality. So, intelligence work is all about discerning what is real and what is not real, and doing it as best you can, free of your own biases, predilections, political inclinations. And when you look at Tulsi Gabbard and Joe Kent, you see people who are completely unable to, describe, true reality, let alone figure out what's happening in the dark corners of the world in order to protect us better.
And to bring it back full circle and to end it, I could have gone with David for longer, but I got to bring Allison on from Muller, She Wrote, 1984. I'll say one quote and I'll have David say the other quote. The final essential command of the party was to not believe the evidence of your eyes and ears. And David, what was that thing they said about the truth?
Well, which truth, hold on a
They
second.
who controls the past
Oh,
controls
the
the.
past. Okay, yeah, okay. I am scrolling towards it. Hold on a second. Hold on a second, Jerry. Here you go. So this was the slogan of the party, which didn't have a name. It was called the Party in 1984. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
And the Smithsonian, as of yesterday, bending the knee to Donald Trump, has removed mention of Trump's impeachment. And now it says instead of 4 past presidents who were impeached, only 3. And today, a person who did their job and accurately reflected the data that showed very minimal job growth, terrible numbers, reminiscent of the pandemic when Donald Trump was president. That person has just been removed by Donald Trump today and most likely will be replaced by another reek like Tulsi Gabbard, like Joe Kent, like Kash Patel, who are interested in promoting fiction and myths and lies to placate their king and daddy, Donald Trump. This is what happened in Russia. This is what happens in Hungary. This is what happened in Nazi Germany. This is what happens under fascism. I have to go to Allison, but David, I give you the final word and shamelessly promote yourself. To the 1,100 people who are watching, I'll have this conversation up later today. It's with the mighty David Korn of Mother Jones. Don't worry, there'll be a transcript. Everything's for free. Become a subscriber. But David, final word to you, and also shamelessly promote yourself.
I think as we think about this, as you people out there are reading and talking to your friends, neighbors, colleagues, particularly those who might not see the world as you see it, really focus on the big picture. Easy to get outraged by each individual outrageous action that happens almost on an hourly basis, but look at the big picture. This is the deconstruction of American society. There is a plan here, and I will segue into my selfish, shameless self
Shameless
promotion.
self-promotion.
Shameless self promotion. Now, it's also a bit selfish. Um, that I have a newsletter. It's called Our Land. You can get it at davidkorn.com. That's corn with a C. And if you sign up, I think right today, right now, this is kind of what I'm writing about for the issue that goes out tomorrow morning. So please give it a try, and I'll look forward to seeing you over there. And Waj, thanks a lot. There's Allison joining us. Do I have to sort of hand the baton?
Let's do it. Hand the
Here's the
baton.
talking.
I'll
Here's the
I'll
talking
start
stick.
running.
Here's the talking stick. Okay.
And the conch. David, that was fantastic. Allison, this was David's first time on Substack. He did a great job. We got 1,200 people. So you already got a primed audience for you. David, we'll see you
That was
next
a good
time. Thanks so much.
good
And
opening act. Take it away.
great opening act. I'm going to link to David's latest piece and also to Our Land. And now we're going to talk about Allison's latest piece. Thanks, David. Allison, latest piece talking about how this authoritarian regime is literally gaslighting us to our face, literally lying to us to our face, literally making us not believe the evidence before our eyes, in our ears, and is trying to do some type of Jedi mind trick, but they're so reckless. Folks, Allison has an exclusive piece that came out today, and she's such a trooper. She moved around her schedule to join us. So thank you, Allison. Allison's exclusive on Mueller, she wrote. You should all go, like me. There's no paywalls. She's a terrible capitalist. We want to help people have information, become a subscriber, preferably a paid subscriber. Exclusive, Allison. Someone waived Ghislaine Maxwell's sex offender status to move her to a minimum security camp in Texas. You heard that correctly. Allison has the sources. And before I give it to Allison, folks, there is no reason for Ghislaine Maxwell, who was complicit in the grooming and molestation of countless girls, to be moved from Texas, where she's serving her 20-year sentence, to a minimum security camp from Florida to Texas. Folks, we try to connect the dots. Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's attorney, and who's a deputy attorney general, met with Ghislaine Maxwell 2 days under secrecy, and then Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney on Twitter openly is appealing to Donald Trump and to the Supreme Court for the victim, Ghislaine Maxwell, to get commuted. And then, as the week is ending, for no reason whatsoever, Ghislaine Maxwell is being moved from a prison in Florida to a minimum security camp in Texas. And Allison's reporting shows that someone waived her sex offender status. Wow. Allison, bombshell. I give it to you.
And I'm just starting to get some information now on what I reported. It was about 3 hours ago that I put this out. I have actually seen the documents and the waiver of her sex offender status, which is like PSF, public safety factor, right? And when you have a PSF sex offender, you're not allowed to be transferred to minimum security prisons. You have to get a waiver from someone higher up in the Bureau of Prisons in order to make that happen. And I had laid eyes on that waiver. And I reported it through my Substack at MillerSheWrote.com. And now I'm just starting to get in 3 hours later. Ken Delanian from NBC with Lisa Rubin is confirming my reporting. They don't mention me, of course, but
yeah, you never get mentioned.
I
mentioned you, though, earlier today. I'll give you another shout out for another story, but continue.
They're confirming Ghislaine Maxwell was technically ineligible to be transferred to a minimum security prison camp, and the Bureau of Prisons had to waive a rule to facilitate that move, according to public records and a federal prison expert. That's what Ken Delanian just now put out on Twitter. He might not have seen my story because he blocked me a long time ago. He blocked
did
me
he put it on? Did he put it on X right now?
Yeah, he put it on Twitter, X, whatever. He
All
blocked
right,
me a long time ago.
as you're explaining this, I'm gonna tell everyone that you're the one that did it. Continue.
Yeah, he blocked me a long time ago when I called him out for basically agreeing with Bill Barr's assessment of the Mueller report that there was no collusion or whatever. And I called him out on that, and he blocked me. So it's been like 5 years since.
This was 19 minutes ago that Ken Delanian said Maxwell was technically ineligible to be transferred from a minimum security federal prison camp, and the Bureau of Prisons had to waive a rule to facilitate the move that you wrote about several hours ago. And I'm just telling people in a quote tweet that you were the one to break it. Sent. Continue, Allison.
Thanks, Waj. But what's really frightening and disgusting here, and I know that several of the survivors, and including the family of Virginia Giuffre, have put out a statement about this. No one was notified. None of the survivors were notified. She was being moved to a minimum security facility, like a Club Fed down in Texas, again, which she is not allowed to be moved to unless there is a waiver. And the sources that I spoke to said that in their however long they've worked there, which is a long time, at the Bureau of Prisons, they've never seen anything like this. This is way beyond normal, the way things normally go. And in order to get that kind of management downgrade from sex offender, or to get your sex offender status waived, it has to be done by pretty top level people. And I name that person in my reporting, who that person would be normally that is responsible for these waivers. The thing is that they just didn't notify any of the survivors. Now, it's not required by the Bureau of Prisons to notify any victims of crimes if you're going to be moving somebody to a low security facility. But these kinds of downgrades are really only available for people who have had years and years and years and years of serving, almost done with their sentence. They aren't, a danger to anyone. They've gotten really good behavior because, federal is different than like state or local. You can't like get out on probation halfway through your thing. You have to serve like pretty much all of your sentence.
Right.
And you don't get transferred to minimum security in the beginning of your sentence. It's unheard of. And a week after she met with Todd Blanche without the line prosecutor there who knows the case, Maureen Comey, who was fired by this administration,
Fired.
without any FBI agents present who worked on the case. A week after that meeting, they're moving her to a minimum security facility. And I
Huh.
have to ask if this is in exchange for something, if this is the reward, or if this is a step in a process toward a pardon, because my understanding is that pardon is also being
Lev,
discussed.
I had Lev on just an hour ago with Zev, and Lev said what you just said. Lev said this is part of a process, step by step. Lev said that his sources told him, I think it was a couple of days ago, that the first step that you will see was Ghislaine Maxwell being transferred to like kind of a club fed type deal, a minimum security camp, right? Much better condition. Still prison, folks, sucks, but much better condition. And then afterwards, you and I have talked about this. Donald Trump will, and the MAGA will have some names, and those names will be liberal names and some chum, not just some liberal names, but also some others who will then be placating the MAGA chum that wants, some Epstein file names. But Donald Trump himself will somehow be exonerated by Ghislaine, and she'll say, "Oh, he was just a friend, but he wasn't there at the islands. It was Bill Clinton, X, Y, and Z." And then she will perhaps not be pardoned, but also he thinks move to witness protection.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would do, right? If I were a bad guy.
You and I talked about that. That's what we would do.
Right. But this person one of the people I spoke to said that the reason for the move is listed as a lesser security transfer, which is called a Code 308 at the Bureau of Prisons. And that's according to the transfer document that I personally reviewed. And they said that's completely inappropriate for inmates who are at the early stages of serving their sentences. Quote, "This is such obvious corruption. I've never seen this before," is what somebody shared with me. And then having some of the survivors and relatives of survivors reach out to me to say that they weren't notified at all, though they were notified when she was moved from Florida to Connecticut. But that might have been because there was a writ of habeas corpus, perhaps. But simply downgrading somebody and giving them a waiver doesn't automatically, per the policy, trigger a notification of the survivors. But still, like, every step of the way in this cover-up, they have failed to consider the survivors and their families. And
Just yesterday, Allison, I mean, did you see that horrific video? And I say horrific because it's so tragic where someone was interviewing Virginia Giuffre's family, her brother. And I mean, the trauma, the brother was like shaking. His hand had to be held down by, I believe, who was his wife, and they were responding in part to Donald Trump, who's giving two opportunities this week to, in some way, shape, or form, Allison, talk about the victims, condemn Epstein, and instead, referring to Virginia Giuffre, who was a 16-year-old spa attendant working at Mar-a-Lago, he said, Epstein stole her from me. And they were just, I mean, the trauma, the pain was so real. That was last night. And today, to wake up to find out that Ghislaine Maxwell, for no reason, folks, no reason, we know the reason, but there's no legal reason for this, was sent not just to the camp, and thanks to your reporting and sources, had her status waived in order to get it done legally. I mean, it is, and I know you're a survivor. So, like, just think about, because people forget, folks, we're trying to bring the focus back on this. There are underage girls, young women, underage women, for decades were abused by Epstein and his friends. So, and not just them, but their family members, right? Virginia Giuffre, folks, she died in April. They say suicide. Other people say there might be other circumstances, but off the record, it's on the record, excuse me, it's death by suicide. This is a woman who, from the age of 16 to 41 to her death, just suffered. And then this week, Donald Trump couldn't even humanize her treated her like property, said, he stole it from me. And then her family had to respond to that pain. And today to see this, Allison.
Yeah, and Tina just asked who waived her status. And in my piece at MullerShewrote.com, it says the unit that approves waivers for sex offenders to be moved to minimum security camps is called the Designation and Sentence Computation Center, the DSCC, not to be confused with the Democratic Senate campaign. And it's near Dallas, this office. And currently the senior deputy assistant director there is a guy named Rick Stover, who is the one who would have approved this waiver. He's a career BOP employee, but he does speak frequently with White House officials, according to sources.
Oh,
So that's who it is. But, talking about the I'm a survivor too, something else that stood out to me in the previous exclusive reporting that I had with the agents that were tasked with looking through these
I was
files.
gonna go there. That's other news that Bloomberg confirmed today.
Bloomberg confirmed, yeah. New York Times came out about 5 days after that with their reporting. But those files weren't labeled and at all in the SharePoint drive on the high side where they were being housed, which, by the way, were available to everybody in the unit and 3 other units as well, across 2 agencies at multiple locations. So
And so, Allison, for people who don't understand, I mean, what Allison's saying was basically all these people are so reckless. There was an Excel sheet that was essentially anyone in the unit could have seen and accessed that Excel sheet. So that's probably why leak, drip, drip, drip. Continue.
Right, which is why probably I had so many people reach out to me to confirm that reporting, and people reach out to generate the sources for that reporting in the first place. It is because so many people had eyes on that. Normally, and if you've worked for the government, you know this. I used to work for the federal government. If you need to access a file in SharePoint, it's opt-in, right? They put your name and your email address and your information as someone who can view the file. It's not just open to everyone and they eliminate people or anything like that. You have to be given specific permissions. But because this was so hurried and so sloppy and slapdash, as Susie Izzard would say, it was, first of all, I mean, the instructions changed every day, sometimes twice a day, on what they were supposed to flag for redaction. But it was so hurried that there weren't any specific permissions given. It was just granted to the entire department and of the Information Management Division, the FBI, plus 3 other departments. And there are multiple sub-departments under all 4 of those departments at multiple locations that were given access. But the thing that I was getting at about being a survivor is that there were several people, according to my sources, who are also victims of crimes like these, survivors of sexual assault, and these files weren't labeled, and they would open them and immediately be hit with videos and images and photos, and they were kind of just given this lip service of, oh, well, if it's traumatic for you, you can always speak to our EAP, right? Our on-site counselor or whatever, or things like that. But they were just blindsided and gut punched by what they saw in these files without any warning. So there wasn't even any protections on the employees that they were forcing on 24, sometimes 48-hour shifts to go through these files. There weren't any kinds of, hey, there could be sensitive stuff in here. It's not labeled. Are you cool with this? There wasn't any of that. And then, of course, because people who work for the government are the way that they are and they don't want to put that work on anybody else, they just took it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I don't do this, somebody else is going to have to be subject to it, because that's how much they care about their fellow employees. But this regime does not care about its employees. They are constantly smearing their employees, and they also do not care about the survivors of Epstein and Maxwell, as evidenced in the 18-step cover-up that they're currently in the process of
in the most
completing,
incompetent, shameless, reckless, dumb cover-up, which should be in the future history books next to the Streisand effect. Instead of having a definition, you should just have Donald Trump's face there. It's making everything worse. And for those who are joining us, I had David Korn on at 4, talking about how Donald Trump is removing any and all folks who are trying to give the correct history with facts. Just today, disastrous job numbers came out that revealed that the Trump administration was lying. And then Donald Trump, as of 2 hours ago, has just fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because he doesn't like the numbers. And then yesterday, Smithsonian, under pressure from Donald Trump, has removed from their exhibit that he was one of the 4 presidents impeached because, of course, that's what's happened in fascists. And right now, in real time, what this fascist regime is trying to do is don't believe the evidence of your eyes and your ears, and they're trying to gaslight America. Because again, folks, I want to go back to this. There is no reason for Ghislaine Maxwell to be transferred from where she is right now, Florida, to a minimum security camp. And Allison's fantastic reporting, in order to make that happen, her status as a sex offender had to get waived in order to make that happen. And this is happening on the heels of her 2-day meeting with Todd Blanche, who also was Donald Trump's personal attorney. We still don't know what was discussed. It was shrouded in secrecy. And right after that 2-day meeting, we have had her attorneys openly on Twitter, because this is how these people can't even crime properly. They're literally, Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer was literally tweeting with Todd Blanche on Twitter, folks. Can't make this shit up. And it's like the world's most unsubtle quid pro quo. Like Lex Luthor and supervillains do their shit like behind closed doors. They're not even doing it behind closed doors, right? And then this week, again, Donald Trump was given 2 chances just to pretend to be decent and empathetic, but this is who he is. He's a cruel vulgarian. He couldn't do it. So this is happening in real time. And I want to go back to a story that Allison broke, and we talked about, what was it, last week, Allison? That you said you got sources telling you that the division of the FBI was charged with going through all the documents and circling Trump's name. And they thought, okay, we're doing like this, investigation, but they weren't. What they were actually doing was to protect a cover-up. And they were asked to, circle Donald Trump, and Donald Trump apparently was mentioned many, showed up many times. Bloomberg today, several hours ago, said the FBI redacted Trump's name in the Epstein files. The Bureau's FOIA team, tasked with conducting a final review of the records, blacked out the names before higher-ups said last month that releasing the documents would not be appropriate or warranted. I don't know, Allison. Seems to be like a big deal and a cover-up. I yield the floor to you.
Yeah, and as I said in my reporting from a while back,
Like last week?
2 weeks ago, maybe?
2 weeks, yeah.
It wasn't just the higher ups at FOIA at FBI. There were also people in the Department of Justice that reviewed these redactions as well. But since my reporting came out, I'm happy to say that Democracy Forward, Norm Eisen, and all those guys have forwarded this spreadsheet where they were tracking all of, because what they were doing is each individual person of like 1,000 plus people had individual spreadsheets going, and then they would upload those spreadsheets at the end of the day, and then those were all stitched together in a master spreadsheet on the SharePoint drive. And so I immediately, myself and my lawyers, Cal McClanahan at National Security Counselors, FOIA'd that spreadsheet, and then also FOIA'd something else that Bloomberg didn't have in its reporting, but I had in mind. There were also training videos on how to redact these things, because as Bloomberg pointed out, and as I said in my reporting too, most of these folks aren't even in the RIDS in the FOIA office. These are 1,000 people in information management who don't redact things, right? So they would have needed the training. Jason Leopold also put this out, FOIA Master, way back on like March 28th or something like that, talking about the rules for redaction. But there were actually training videos on how to use your Excel spreadsheet, where to upload your information for when you see mentions of Donald Trump, like specifically training videos. And so since that reporting, both Democracy Forward and Senator Dick Durbin and folks on the Judiciary Committee in the Senate have asked, either demanded, Department of Justice hand over the spreadsheets and the training videos, and Democracy Forward has FOIA'd it. But I FOIA'd it the day that reporting came out. So we already have a couple of FOIAs going. My lawsuit will probably hit the docket for that information before anybody else's, since I filed it before I put the reporting up, because I knew everybody was going to start FOIAing these spreadsheets and these videos. So I just want to give a big shout out to national security counselors for helping me file those requests. And you can support them too, by the way, in their work, because this is all pro bono stuff that they're doing with me and MSW Media, my podcast network. You can support them at nationalsecuritylaw.org/donate. So they're a 501c3. Everything would be tax deductible. It all goes to them. It all goes to this good work for FOIAing these files and making sure that if they don't hand them over, they have to tell us why they don't want to hand them over. So that's the goal isn't just to get these files, right? Because they're not going to give it to us. The goal is to get a judge to make the DOJ tell them why they're refusing to hand them over.
And this is like the world's worst, most shameless, most naked, most transparent, most public cover-up in history. I want to remind people the Wall Street Journal, that flaming communist rag owned by a liberal, woke superstar Rupert Murdoch, reported that Pam Bondi told Donald Trump in May that he was mentioned in the Epstein files and documents. And that means for the past 2 months, folks, this Trump administration has been lying to the American public, because Donald Trump was asked about that by ABC News. He lied. And furthermore, they have been engaging in an active cover-up. The question is, what are they covering up? And the answer seems pretty clear. A lot of powerful names, not just Donald Trump, but some certain other powerful people. I want to ask you this, Allison. Lev says part of the plan, like we mentioned, is first and foremost transferring Ghislaine. So he was right about that. His source said that's what's going to happen. The second one was that Ghislaine would mention liberal names, and not just liberal names, some chum for the right wing.
Right,
So
like
liberal.
the Bear Stern guy or the...
Yeah. The Clinton, probably Summers, Richardson, Gates, and a couple others. Okay, the plot, Lev said, the hope is that Democrats, certain Democratic establishment, some of the old guard, like the Schumers and others, in order to protect the Democratic establishment and some friends and some donors, will then align with Donald Trump and say, okay, this is a distraction. Let's talk about the bill. Let's talk about measles. And the hope is that the Democratic establishment, or certain people in the Democrats who are close to these folks, who are also donors, will then be complicit in, if you will, the distraction. You and I have talked about this, and you and I are under agreement, and I'm very confident we're still under agreement. If I'm wrong, let me know. That it doesn't matter who's in the file. Democrats, libertarians, celebrities, philanthropists, donors. If it's shown that these people were complicit in any way, shape, or form on preying on girls, F them all. Who gives a shit? Release all the names and then have these people answer, why are you in the files? What's your relationship with Epstein? What did you do? You're innocent until proven guilty, of course, but you probably should answer why you were on the plane. Your take on this?
Yeah, I don't give a fuck if Bill Clinton is in the file. Like, I'm not planning on voting for Bill Clinton of anything in the future, nor is he like a friend of mine. And even if he was, he would no longer be in this instance. And it would be really weird for establishment Dems to be so adamant about calling for the release of the Epstein files and then to be like, oh, wait, no, nothing to see here. So I don't know necessarily that that's going to happen, although we might see some distractions, not obvious kind of distractions behind the scenes for that. But they have been relentlessly, the establishment Dems have been on board with relentlessly calling for the release of the Epstein files. So they have to know that that comes with the risk of Bill Clinton being on there. So I don't know if I necessarily see that, but yeah, I do not care who is in these files. It doesn't matter what party they're with. The difference between us and cult members is that we aren't going to try to defend the people on the list that are on our side. So, I mean, I saw this perfect tweet that summed it up great. It was some amazing woman on Twitter. She was like, oh no, what am I going to do with my Bill Clinton flag and my Bill Clinton hat and all my Bill Clinton shirts? And oh gosh, my Bill Clinton Bible. What am I going to do? Sad face. Like, we don't have that over here.
And I think I think what you said with Wyden and Khanna and a few others who have jumped on this and say release the files, and Wyden especially. I mean, it seems like once Wyden does these investigations, he's really good at it. He's talked about the money trail. The money trail is where it's at, folks, to really get the connections and all the players. But I feel like they're not stupid. They know Bill is his name is mentioned. Now, whether or not he did anything, who knows? But they know, and I think this is a sign that the Democratic establishment or some of the people who are elected officials realize that if we have to give up Bill Clinton to get to the bottom of this, well, so be it. And I'm like,
give him
whoop.
up, from what? What was he? I mean, he would come out during the DNC and give a speech, but like, give him up. What? He can't speak at the DNC anymore? Oh, okay.
Oh no! Oops. Also, I don't know if you saw this latest news. It came out yesterday that well, first of all, when it comes to the video, CBS News earlier in the week. I don't think we've talked in a couple of days, but earlier in the week, CBS News said there's a government source that says that the Trump administration, Pam Bondi in particular, they have the full unedited tape. The tape, of course, the famous tape for those who don't know that, that shows what happened to Epstein, that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel reviewed last month and said, hey, nothing to see here, folks. Trust us. He killed himself. It's a suicide. But then it was revealed, oh, a minute's missing. And then Wired said, actually, 2 minutes and 50 seconds are missing. And then yesterday, Daily Beast said, there is a mysterious third person in an orange jumpsuit or an orange color that showed up in the video. And we're not conspiracy theorists, but we sit there and go, wait a second. Why is there a minute missing? Or why is there 2 minutes and 50 seconds missing? And why is there this third person there with a color that no other person had? Epstein wasn't wearing an orange color, right? And now we find out from CBS News that apparently they have access in the Trump administration to the complete unedited tape. So then I'm like, all right, if he did kill himself and that's the official statement, release the tape. Why won't you release the tape, Allison? What am I missing?
Yeah, let me just let you know that there was a story that I have on sources that I didn't publish because CBS actually did such a good job with their full report of the jail video. But it was confirmed to me through multiple sources that there is no missing time. DOJ has the full raw files. So I can double or triple confirm that story that CBS has because they have it from a high-level government official. I have it from folks who work at Bureau of Prisons or Bureau of Prisons. But the full tape is there, and not to mention there are 2 other cameras situated outside in an elevator bank that you could release if there's nobody going in and out of there. You got to come up that elevator to go even toward the staircase. And this was in CBS's reporting. Again, I didn't put this out because CBS covered it all, and I would just be sort of repeating and piling on. But those 2 cameras that footage has not been released, and that would prove Pam Bondi's contention that the minute is missing on all the tapes going back to 1999, not tapes, but digital recordings, because we reset it every night. Now, what is not understood within the Bureau is why Pam Bondi lied about that and
Right.
why she didn't just release the full raw video, which we can now confirm, double, triple, quadruple confirm, is not the raw files from beginning to end. So there are 2 files stitched together. I think it was done in Adobe. There are screenshots. You can see a cursor in one of them. It's, kind of proving that just the incompetence, the incompetence is. Remember when Manafort tried to reformat a PDF document to lie and he got caught? Or remember when Manafort's lawyers tried to redact a document and filed it on the court document but actually all they did was highlight it in black. So people just went in and unhighlighted it and read what was behind the redaction bars. These are the people who are trying to orchestrate one of the biggest cover-ups of a sex trafficking pedophile ring in history. And of course, they are doing exactly the job that I would expect them to do in covering it up. But that CBS report was very, very thorough. And I think that all Pam Bondi would need to do is release those additional tapes to either prove her fact that there's a missing minute, or as we all know, there are no missing minutes, and just release the entire thing. Because if their contention is that nothing happened and you release the minute and nobody goes in and out, okay. But she can't do that now because she lied her fucking face off to the world. And they double down on all of their lies. And she has to stick with her story now that there's a missing minute in every prison, on every tape, and every camera going back to 1999. And that's what the
But then
confusion is
also,
in the Bureau. Is they're like, why did she lie?
there you go. That's what I was about to say. And that begs the question for even people like me who are not into conspiracy theories, and especially in the last 10 years with disinformation and seeing QAnon, seeing how dangerous it is, I try to be very careful. And all the people I've spoken to, Allison and others, Lev and Zev and Vicky Ward and all those others, I try my best the last couple of weeks to separate fact from fiction and what's allegations and source and what's out there in the open that you can see with your eyes and ears, right? We try to be very careful. But then based on exactly what you all just said, my question as just a rational human being is, yo, it's in your interest to release the tape. Your own base is radicalized. Your own base is pissed off. You're negative on this issue. You're underwater with your base on this issue. You want to back up Cash and Dan Bongino, who risked their reputation and went out and said, "Hey, folks, trust us. We saw the tape. He killed himself." You want to quell all conspiracy theories? Just release the tape. Just release the tape
Yeah,
that
just
you
say,
have.
hey, we made a mistake when we transferred it from
Exactly.
system to system, and here is the raw footage. We apologize. Here's the raw footage. Did you see? Nothing happened in that minute. But she's already lied about it. And Waj, what's really, really upsetting is that slapdash, shoddy Inspector General report from 2023 that CBS was citing about the different camera angles and all that stuff was written by Michael Horowitz, one of only two inspectors general who was not fired by Donald Trump. The other one is Kufari, the guy who deleted all the January 6th Secret Service text messages. Those two guys were kept on. 18 other inspectors general were fired. And this is also the same Inspector General Horowitz who lost the Emil Bovee whistleblower report and audio
I was about to go there.
of the meeting that proved he lied to Congress to the Senate Judiciary Committee during his confirmation hearing. That found the day of the vote to confirm him. Same guy. So that's the IG we're talking about. By the way, at the end of, I think, June or early July, he was moved from his longtime job as Department of Justice Inspector General to, guess where? The Federal Reserve. He is
Well,
now the watchdog at the Federal Reserve.
and if today the Federal Reserve Governor is going to resign early, handing Trump an immediate opening on the board. And that was today, folks, from 1 hour ago. There you
So
go.
guess
It's happening.
who's going to be investigating Jerome Powell and his $3.1 billion building where Jerome Powell showed up Trump on TV. Guess who's going to be investigating that?
Yeah.
It's going to be Horowitz.
It's folks. They're not even good. They're not even trying to cover it up. That's what, this is like we're being killed by the world's dumbest, most reckless people. It's a fascist regime. They're rewriting history, rewriting the facts. 80% of Republican voters believe that Donald Trump won the election that he lost. Many of them believe in the replacement theory. Many of them believe in QAnon. And the interesting thing is that the only thing that might actually take out Donald Trump is the fiction. That they fed their own base. And now they can't remove themselves from it because the base has been radicalized in real time with the story of the deep state and me and Allison, anyone who's against Donald Trump is part of this international sex trafficking ring where we worship the devil, not making this up, and not only just, God forbid, molest kids, because that's bad enough. No, we murder the kids, and we're all part of the deep state, and the only person who could come in and fix it is Donald Trump, and Donald Trump gets elected, and he brings Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi, and now who are supposed to reveal the deep state conspiracy through the Epstein files, but oh shit, Donald Trump is all over the Epstein files, so they can't release anything, and guess what? Now they've become the deep state, and they're thinking, and they might get away with it. I don't think they will, because someone said, well, Donald Trump's gotten away with everything so far, but this is the reason why I've been saying this for a couple of weeks, Allison, is the reason why this one's sticking. And this is the sad state of affairs that we're in America, is that it's his base and the right wing that's leading it. Wall Street Journal is doubling down. Rupert Murdoch is doubling down. Fox even News is doubling down, right? They didn't let him distract. They published the same day that Donald Trump last week tried to distract with Obama. Ned Price published his piece calling out Tulsi Gabbard. And now you're seeing the MAGA base coming out, right? This one is a tough nut for them to distract from. That's my take, Allison. I don't think he'll be successful on this, but your take.
Yeah, I was actually, the reason I keep looking down is I type little things I want to ask you as you're talking. Otherwise, I forget. But I was going to ask you, did you think that the Epstein story would stick around this long? And I personally didn't at the beginning because a lot of folks were like, oh, he gets away with everything. I was hoping that it would stick around. But a lot of this, and I've talked about this because your theory is that MAGA gave them the permission, gave the corporate media the permission to keep running this story. But also, I thought it would be gone by now because I was overestimating their ability to cover this up. They are dumb. They are incompetent. Here's some things you don't do if you want a conspiracy theory to go away. You don't fire the lead prosecutor. You don't give Ghislaine Maxwell immunity and then not meet with anybody other than the FBI agents. You don't edit the Epstein jail videos in such an obvious way that everybody's going to pick up on it, and then be reported in multiple outlets. You don't move her to a low security facility, Club Fed in Texas, by waiving her sex offender status. Like, these are, if you want something to go away, like, do they have a PR like, talk to the Tylenol people, how they got out of that whole thing in the 80s or something. Talk to somebody like
Nice deep cut that I actually I know what you're talking about, Allison. Well played.
I mean, it was one of the best PR saves in the history of a branding, right? The Tylenol thing with the poison and the whatever. But I remember during the first Trump administration where I was like, I should start a website. I should start a website called runitbymefirst.com. Like, if you think you have an idea, send me an email at Allison@runitbymefirst.com, and I will tell you if you're fucking stupid or not. And that didn't just come out of politics. It also came out of like Toyota rebranding itself to Moving Forward, when they had a problem with automatic acceleration and no brakes. Like, come on, run it by me first. And this is just not the way that, if I were a criminal mastermind, would cover any of this up. So while it's that MAGA hates this and they're mad and they're giving the corporate media the permission structure to keep this in the news over and over again, I also think it has to do with the fact that they are just completely and totally incompetent and unable to properly do a villainous cover-up.
To answer your question, the reason why I have been consistent, and some people say, well, Waj, and I understand people's cynicism. Nothing's penetrated. They'll distract. And why I said, I think this is the thing that'll crack. Weaken. I didn't say it'll break him. I said and I've been on it, folks. If you've been following me, I said Democrats, everyone, the majority, stay on this issue. Stay on Epstein. And I've said one of my favorite memes is Ken Watanabe from Godzilla, let them fight. It's because, like a masochist, I've been following MAGA for, and the radicalization of MAGA since 2011. And Elon Musk, folks, when he had his dust up with Donald Trump, you all recall on June 5th, Elon Musk, who knows the base, what did he say? Donald Trump is in the files. And I said at that time, that out of all the things that Elon Trump has said against Donald Trump, that one, folks, I said in June 5th, that one's going to sting. That's the haymaker. And because he knows the base, because the base, again, has been radicalized by Donald Trump, Bongino, and the right wing. The base has been radicalized with the QAnon conspiracy, which Donald Trump himself has promoted, which, folks, has radicalized people like Ashley Babbitt and others to commit violence. It, folks, has radicalized a dad to kill his own family in San Diego because he thought the mom had transferred the devil spirit into the girls, right? So this is what the right wing has done, going back to Pizzagate. And they're like, well, this is a fantastic way to go against all liberals and critics of Trump and elevate Donald Trump. Now, the problem is they radicalize their own base. This is like Frankenstein's monster, Allison, right? And the monster was promised red meat. They were promised the files, promised. And you saw that they kept trying to punt, right? You, libs of TikTok, Cernovich, come to the White House, dress up. Here's a binder. Look, binders. And then MAGA, you saw MAGA like, what's in the binder? Never mind. Pam Bondi, I have files on my desk. Can you show the files? Cash, Dan, go on TV and say that you've seen the tape and everything's fine. And
it's
then
like
they
Ryan Walters getting caught with porn on behind him in his meeting.
Oh, so good. So good. And ever since last month when Dan Bongino and Kash Patella, deer in headlights, I'm like, just keep digging, keep digging. And now this is where I was surprised. I always said weaken, right? Like, I don't think it'll dismantle Trump, but the fact that Rupert Murdoch, and I think I shared this with you, right? I think you and I, when we first talked, I said, I think he's sharpening the knives. This is the week where I edited. And I said, he's not just sharpening the knives, Allison. Now the knives have been sharpened. They're pointed at Donald Trump. And now we're in stabby motion. I think we're officially in stabby territory, especially when we all learned that right before Rupert Murdoch in the Wall Street Journal dropped that first piece, J.D. Vance met with Rupert Murdoch. And so I think they see an old man, 79 years old, who, folks, he doesn't look good. And not only does he not look good, he doesn't seem to be that sharp. He lashed out at Josh Hawley. Did you see that? Because he misunderstood what Hawley was saying, and he attacked Hawley. And then Hawley's like, "Yo, don't worry, I'm not coming after your money." He goes, "Okay." I feel like they see that this guy won't last, and I think they're officially hastening his demise. Your take?
Yeah, you and I have talked about this. I think we've
Oh
talked
yeah, yeah.
about this on Substack Live too. I mean, it seems clear to me that his usefulness has expired.
There you go.
He signed the billionaire bailout bill.
Yep.
He gutted our health care and our food benefits and gave them to his rich friends. He signed the Genius Act so that he could do the stablecoin thing.
First
And
pro crypto legislation where all the rich white men in suits came in and saw him sign it.
yeah, so now that the Broligarchs, the ones who paid for JD Vance, the ones that Murdoch likes, have gotten everything they want, why wouldn't they? Now, I think you and I thought maybe they'd wait until the next election to
That's right. That's right.
swap him out. Who knows? But, on the let them fight issue, Waj, 4 months ago, Mark Cuban posted on Blue Sky, but this is before the Elon Trump breakup. He said, Elon versus Trump, who is a better manipulator? How long can they play nice? Right? Because we all sort of saw two people like this clashing and butting heads. And my response 4 months ago was I said, it depends on who has the Epstein dirt. If they both do, then Elon wins because he has more money. And
You said
that's
that. You said that with me too when we were talking. I remember that.
hmm So we were kind of anticipating this. I, again, am very pleasantly surprised that it has stayed in the news. But again, a lot of it has to do with their ineptness and inability to properly cover things up. So we'll see where all this goes. I personally would be not happy with Vance as president. But what I want to say is I would be very happy if Donald Trump were removed. And that's more important than the succession to me, because that he is MAGA. The MAGA base is not they're not fans of They don't care about JD
No.
Vance. And it would be real hard to move the cult to a new leader.
Yep.
So I think it would really fracture the Republican Party right now, which is why he's desperately running around trying to gerrymander new seats for himself in Texas and probably other red states. So
And he will. And no, I completely agree with you. And what we said also, and what we've been saying, especially with my co-host Danielle Moody of the Democracy Show, is that electoral reform that he talked about was cheating. Voila, Texas, openly trying to steal and gerrymander. And then if that doesn't work, what I stand by, and I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. And I want to be proven wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong. No problem. Is that if they get really, really, really desperate, folks, he has his own Gestapo. 10,000 ICE agents, $180 billion given to ICE. All the guardrails, most of them are now gone because they're replaced by Reeks like Kash Patella, Pam Bondi, Bongino, and a few others. If I were him, I hate to give him ideas, I would simply say that I have to declare martial law. Stephen Miller has already used the term invasion to justify the use of the Alien Enemies Act. And I will say I have to punt on the elections because of the power vested in me as a commander in chief. I have to protect this nation. But don't worry, elections will be back. And then I'll declare martial law. And then if people stand up and rise, I'll just unleash the ICE agents along with the National Guard and the military, which is, by the way, what's happening in LA. I hope I'm wrong. You all think I'm crazy. But then again, I also said he would not leave peacefully in 2019. And I also said he would pardon all the violent insurrectionists. And I also kept mentioning his quote in October. Every time I was on Piers Morgan, everywhere I went, I said, this is the same man who's quoted Hitler and said that he would unleash the National Guard and the military against the enemy from within. Voila. I hope I'm wrong, Allison, but I think he might be too tired. I think he might be too old. I think there might be too many knives out now. And like you, I am afraid of J.D. Vance because he is a complete and utter puppet of actual brilliant supervillains. Peter Thiel, well, not brilliant, but very smart supervillains, competent supervillains. But I agree with you completely. This base belongs to Trump. It can't be transferred. And then once Trump goes out, you're going to see a Julius Caesar type of fight within the Republican Party to get the crown. And this is where we have to be organized, and the majority has to flex and pray and pounce and fight and literally fight. And I think this is why two reasons. I'll end on this before I give you the final word. why I think the Epstein story, and I've been on it, is I could see it weakening him, and it has weakened him. The other reason is, I think it's important to go back full circle. There are victims. There's only one person in prison, Ghislaine Maxwell. She deserves to be in prison. But there are a lot of men who are part of this sex trafficking ring. There are a lot of men who preyed on these girls. And these men have never been held accountable. And you saw the pain in the voices, in the faces of Virginia Giuffre's family. This is still deep. And there should be justice and accountability. And I think the Epstein will show you the names and the players who for decades have gone scot-free and who have abused these girls. So for the sake of just justice and accountability for the victims, I think this is a story that should not go away. Allison, final word to you.
Yeah, I concur with you. It shouldn't go away, and the survivors should get everything that they want and all the things that they don't. And on removing Trump, we have to remember that Vance or no Vance, removing Trump doesn't remove Russ Vought. It doesn't remove Stephen Miller, the people actually calling the shots in this administration. So what we would have to watch for is how aligned Murdoch and Thiel and all of the broligarchs are with what Russ Vought and Stephen Miller are doing. If they want to win another election and count actual votes, it would behoove them to not continue with what Stephen Miller is doing with mass deportation. It's hugely unpopular. Same with tariffs. But I don't know about the dismantling of the government. I know all Doge wanted was our personal information. That's all Elon cared about. But here we are, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But those are the real people running our government right now, and that's just chopping off the head of the snake, figuratively, does kill. I think it does kill the cult, and that's figuratively. And I do think that that's very important.
And you're going to have the broligarchy versus the white supremacists versus the white Christian nationalists. And if you have to just limit it to, for the sake of simplicity, the Musk, Thiel, Sachs broligarchy versus the Stephen Millers versus the Russell Vaught's. It'll be very interesting, folks. All of them are united by two things: racism, eugenics, a belief that white folks and people who look like them deserve to be at the top, and also a desire for power by any violent means necessary. And the third thing I would say is greed. Those are the three things that unite all of them, even though they kind of have different ways of getting there and different ideologies and agendas. Allison, fantastic reporting as always. Folks, Allison is such a trooper. She completely changed her schedule just to do this. She was supposed to be recording, and now she's going to be recording in 7 minutes. So thank you so much, Allison. For those, the 2,100 people, almost 2,200 people who have joined us, I was talking to first David Korn for the first 30 minutes. He did some fantastic reporting about also coinciding with breaking news, how Donald Trump is acting like a fascist and pretty much doing what Nixon always wanted to do, but never had the yes men to do in the rewriting of history and the replacing of qualified, competent people in government with literal extremists, folks. The person who's running the Center for Countering Terrorism now is a man who is aligned with white supremacists and extremists. Yep, that's happening. Another big piece of news, but one of the 87 scandals. And then right after that, Allison joined us to talk about her report that is now confirmed by everyone else, but she broke it early, where Ghislaine Maxwell has been sent for no reason whatsoever, folks, from Florida to Texas to a minimum security camp because someone waived her sex offender status. So we're going to have this up on my Substack and Allison's Substack. Allison's Substack is Mueller, She Wrote. Please become a subscriber. Like me, there are no paywalls because she's a terrible capitalist and she wants people to be informed. But if you have a little bit of money, give her some money. And she also hosts the fantastic Daily Beans podcast, where you get the news of the day with great swear words and some nice snark. And also, this is the Left Hook Substack. Today, I'm subbing in for Mary Trump. Mary Trump has a live show, 6 p.m. Eastern time, and she's just a bit under the weather, so I'm jumping in for her. We're going to talk about all the news. So it'll give me 30 minutes to get some water. But Allison, if I didn't do a good enough job, shamelessly promote yourself.
Oh, no, that was plenty. Thank you so much. I can't wait for your Nerd Avengers takeover of the Mary Trump channel. And all my stuff is always free at MuellerSheWrote.com. All of this reporting, all of these scoops. If you do have any information, you can reach out to me. My signal's in my Blue Sky bio. And if you're able to support either Waj or me. All our stuff is free. But if you're able to become a paid subscriber, it really means the world to us. It helps us continue to do this work. So thank you so very much, Waj. It's great to see you. And thanks to everybody who's here for listening.
Thank you to Allison, who changed her entire schedule around. And folks, this will be up on my Substack and Allison's Substack for the 2,200 people who tuned in late. Really strongly recommend listening to the entire conversation. David hands the baton to Allison. But if not, just listen to Allison and her reporting and her connecting of the dots. See you soon, my friend. Be kind, be decent. Do not be a fascist. And for anyone else who still has an appetite, see you in 35 minutes over on Mary Trump Live's channel on YouTube and on Substack. Take care, everyone.